This plane, the F-15 Eagle, was built for one purpose and one purpose only: total air superiority. It was created to combat the threat posed by the Soviet MiG fighters during the height of the Cold War in the 70s, and was the first strike plane that could detect and kill from many miles away, as well as engage in dogfights. It's still in operation today, and in 30 years of active service, it has never been shot down in one-on-one air combat. It is the benchmark by which all modern strike planes are judged. The F-15 has seen active service in both Gulf Wars and is now keeping the peace patrolling the skies above the west coast of the United States with the Oregon Air National Guard, constantly on the lookout for any threat to the U.S.'s national security.
I'm Mo Gass, a major in the Oregon Air National Guard, and I fly the F-15.
My name is Paul Fitzgerald. I'm an F-15 pilot for the Oregon Air National Guard.
Major Dale Bennett, known as Mo Gass, and Major Paul Fitzgerald, known as Snap, are former airline pilots, but now they work as fighter pilots at the Air National Guard. They are on alert 24/7 and are ready to scramble and shoot down intruders at a moment's notice.
The F-15 is a pretty incredible airplane, actually. Thinking about its design was in the late 50s, 60s. Came off the production line in the mid-70s. So it's been around for quite some time. It's a pretty powerful airplane. It was actually built to rule the skies and strictly in an air superiority type of a role. And it has not lost in battle yet, and I don't think it's going to lose anytime soon.
The F-15 first flew in 1972. Over 1,200 were built, and now there are still over 500 flying on active duty.
It's a pretty big airplane. It was actually built to house the radar that lives in the nose. The airplane is about 43 feet tall, about 63, 64 feet long, and at the tail it's just under 20 feet high. So it's a pretty large airplane. It's been akin to the size of a tennis court.
As well as patrolling the skies for intruders, the pilots of the Air National Guard also carry out training exercises. The F-15 carries a range of missiles and a cannon with 900 rounds of high explosive bullets.
We have two arenas we normally fight in. It's within visual range and then, of course, beyond visual range. Within visual range, I have a 20-millimeter cannon that's in the right wing root of the airplane. Once you start moving into a little bit further out into miles and so, we'd start talking about the heat-seeking missile. And then once you get beyond that range, now you start talking about the advanced medium-range air-to-air missile that we use, otherwise known as the AMRAAM.
The real benefit of the AMRAAM is its ability to really get out there and reach out and touch someone and turn them into pieces and parts.
The F-15 has two giant engines producing a combined thrust of 46,900 pounds between them, capable of pushing the plane to a top speed of 3,000 kilometers per hour. That's around 3 times the speed of a 747.
The thrust that you get out of these airplanes gets you off the ground fast and gets you to where you need to get fast.
The biggest advantage having a great thrust-to-weight ratio is the ability to power through a turn and to not only turn as quick as you can, but also to be able to sustain that turn in combat. It might take, in order to kill the enemy, it might take 3 or 4 360-degree turns in order to successfully get behind them and get into a weapons engagement zone and to either shoot a missile off or to shoot the gun.
But turning at high speeds exerts massive forces known as G-forces on the pilot. 1 G is the force of normal gravity. When the pilot makes a high G turn, the weight of their body is multiplied by the same number.
6.5 right there.
At 6.5 Gs, a 76-kilogram pilot would feel as if he weighs 6.5 times as much. That's 496 kilograms.
In order to be able to cope with the 9 Gs that the airplane will pull and actually sustain for a little bit of time, they give us several different pieces of equipment to help that happen. That's the combat edge vest. It fills up with air, keeps the internal pressure in your chest cavity, so the blood can actually get pushed out of your chest cavity and into your head. Most important is your G pants too, G suit otherwise known as. It tightens up. It also moves the blood from your lower extremities into your chest, and obviously to try to keep the blood in your head so that you can keep blood in your eyes so that you can see and think. The color goes out of your vision first. The second thing that goes is obviously you have tunnel vision, and that's followed by stages of going unconscious, and that's the whole reason we're trying to avoid that. You don't want to be manipulating the controls of an airplane when you're unconscious.
The pilots also wear a helmet with an oxygen mask in case the cockpit were to depressurize at high altitude, something no pilot wants when engaging the enemy at 9,000 meters. F-15 pilots Mogas and Snap from the Oregon Air National Guard are going on a dogfight training exercise. They are going to simulate shooting an intruder out of the sky by locking their weapons onto each other in a mock dogfight. Before each flight, the pilots carry out one final check to make sure that the plane is airworthy. Even though the F-15 is an old plane, it is still the premier air-to-air combat fighter in operation today.
So you have an airplane that's been around for 30 years, and still there's countries out there that are still trying to build airplanes to counter this airplane specifically. And I think that's attributed to the continual attention this airplane's been given over the years to keep it at cutting edge.
Mogas 1 and 2, AB climb to 15,000 is approved. Departure end cable indicates up. Wind 260 at 6, runway 28 left, clear for takeoff, change to departure.
Mogas 1 clear for takeoff with quick climb, and say again the freak for departure.
Departure frequency 299.2 for Mogas 1 and 2.
299.2 for Mogas, Mogas push 9.
By the time you get down to the end of the runway, you're doing 300, 400, 500 miles an hour, and then you can basically just take off straight up into the air. It's quite a sensation. It's like being on the tip of a rocket.
By the time you reach the end of the runway, your gear's up, your flaps are up, and you're ready to pull. You go straight up in the air. You're ready to pull a nice 7G turn straight up to go vertically. And you can get up in a hurry that way. It'll certainly wake you up in the morning.
The afterburners can push the F-15 to 4,545 meters. That's 4.5 kilometers up, in less than a minute, reaching twice the speed of sound, but at a cost.
Anytime you use afterburners, you're going to increase your IR or your infrared or your heat signature.
This would make the plane vulnerable to heat-seeking missiles, which could lock onto the heat exhaust from the afterburner and shoot the plane down.
You're also using a heck of a lot more gas because it's raw fuel in order to get that afterburner working. So you have a fuel disadvantage by having to use it, and obviously you have a heat signature disadvantage.
Once they reach 9,000 meters, Mogas and Snap start their dogfight training exercise. They take turns being the hunter and hunted. One plane acts out the role of the enemy, while the other chases and attempts to lock on its weapons guidance systems. Once the hunter plane locks on, he registers a kill.
There's a gun strike kill right there.
A strike for Mogas. Had this been a real intruder, they'd now be nothing more than charred metal and smoke. Even though the F-15 is well past its shelf life, it will continue to be the U.S. Air Force's premier air-to-air strike fighter until its successor comes into service in a decade.
I believe it still does rule the skies. There's specific airplanes that do other things probably a little better, but when you take the overall package and you talk about the overall airplane, it's still a top contender in the world, and probably will continue to be until we bring the new one online.
It's just a beautiful airplane. I don't think that in the history of mankind, I don't think we will ever build a more beautiful airplane, and it's just a real joy to fly.